Still calling your congressman? Waiting on hold? Hoping someone took your message?
Thank you for calling.
There's a better way to do this. The MAHA Legislative Tracker lets you browse every MAHA bill. Pick the ones that matter to you and send a letter to your rep with a single click. Search federal, by state, or by the issues you care about most. Take 60 seconds and make it count. Your voice can make America healthy again at mahaaction.org.
There was a time when the news delivered truth.
It still seems like a dream.
When integrity was paramount.
I cannot contend that I have always been right or wise.
And trusted voices guided a nation.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment?
Today, the headlines are blurred. The signal lost in the noise of corporate agendas and paid narratives.
Vocal anti-vaxxer.
Deranged lies.
It is humiliating.
What happened to the truth? It hasn't disappeared. It's simply moved. The MAHA Report brings you unfiltered, independent journalism covering the issues of the Make America Healthy Again movement. Rediscover the facts and reclaim the truth. Subscribe now at themahareport.com.
Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, and welcome to the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. At its heart, the MAHA movement is about something simple but essential, making Americans healthier, both physically and mentally. And while our central focus is on human well-being, we understand a deeper truth. If we fail as stewards of the animals around us and the natural world we live in, we will never achieve real health, let alone happiness or prosperity. Which brings us to today's subject. It is, frankly, shameful that experiments on animals, are carried out in the name of public health, continue at the scale that they do. Animal testing isn't only cruel, it's also unnecessary, as 90 to 95% of the results are meaningless and don't carry over to humans. So we're torturing animals with no actual benefit, and it just has to stop. And it won't surprise anyone listening to learn that some of the same figures, some of the same people who built their careers misleading the public on subjects of human health have done exactly the same thing when it came to animal testing. If the name Anthony Fauci rings familiar, consider this. He presided over hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars funneled into what can only be described as the torture of animals. Secretary Kennedy has understood this issue for a long time, and that's precisely why this administration has taken historic steps to phase out testing on dogs, cats, and primates. But we need to move faster, because the truth is we just don't need to do this testing. We now have sophisticated computer models, many powered by artificial intelligence, that actually deliver what animal testing has always promised, but never could. On today's program, we'll explore the scientific, technological, and ethical case for a reality every one of us should stand behind. It's time to totally end animal testing in the military, in healthcare, in cosmetics, in every sector. So our guests today include two remarkable women from the nonprofit Big Dog Ranch Rescue, Lauree Simmons and Jordana Cohen. You'll hear powerful stories of how human compassion can move mountains for animals that have no voice of their own, of course. So these animals that, thanks to people like Fauci, have been stripped of even the most basic rights. And with so much of what MAHA is doing, the pull is partisan for this, and it's overwhelming for ending these cruel animal testing. I genuinely believe that working together, we can put a stop to this cruelty while championing gold standards of suffering that strengthens the economy and it serves the health of every living creature, great and small. Now, before we get to today's main conversation, there are a couple of urgent items I want to address. The first comes and concerns a community that has been close to the heart of this movement from the very beginning, East Palestine, Ohio. In a powerful statement, the president reminded the country of what unfolded in that small town back in 2023. This was a horrific tragedy, and as he put it, an utterly incompetent response from the Biden administration. The president stood with the people of East Palestine from the start. He visited them, he fought for them, and it was his pressure, and that pressure alone, that forced Biden and FEMA, who had openly said that they would not be sending federal aid, to finally act. President Trump is now strongly urging Congress to include the Railway Safety Act, which he personally endorsed back in 2023, in the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. He's calling on every Republican to vote yes when this comes up as an amendment in the Transportation Committee this week. As he said himself, we cannot delay any further on protecting the American public. And as Secretary Kennedy has said and backed him on this earlier today, East Palestine reminded the country that a single derailment can devastate an entire community's health and their environment and their future. He said, I've been spending decades fighting to protect communities from toxic chemical exposure, and the families in East Palestine deserve lasting accountability and stronger safeguards to prevent this from ever happening again. Our message from Congress is clear, said Secretary Kennedy. Pass the Railway Safety Act. The message to Congress could not be clearer. This must be passed. Get it done. I also want to take a moment to mark another major MAHA victory from just a couple of days ago. Earlier this year, MAHA PAC made the decision to back Representative Julia Letlow in what at the time looked like a long shot, like it was probably hopeless, in her bid to unseat veteran Senator Bill Cassidy. We didn't just back her, we went all in. We sent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of emails and texts and phone calls. We mobilized our influencers, which reach 200 million people every day. And Cassidy, as many as you know, as most of you know, went out of his way to obstruct MAHA at every turn. And he had $22 million behind him, more than 5 times what Julia Letlow had. And he's opposed reforms designed to make this nation healthier. He's opposed everything that Bobby stands for. And he led a deeply political effort to block President Trump's highly qualified MAHA nominees from joining Secretary Kennedy at HHS. So I'm pleased to share the very good news. Thanks to everything all of you did, Bill Cassidy didn't just lose, he came in third. He just got slaughtered. And so, Saturday, MAHA was on the ballot. And the voters of Louisiana answered clearly, as I think they will all around the country. They said no to Cassidy, and they said no to corruption. And they said yes to change. And I have every confidence that with the MAHA PAC's continued support, Julia Letlow and so many other candidates will come to power in this country, will get into the Senate and into the House. So for MAHA voters, the message could not be clearer. There's no going back. No going back to the Faucis of the world lying about viruses and vaccines and, of course, beagles. No more dishonesty from figures like Cassidy. No more gaslighting from the purveyors of toxic food or the architects of over-medicalization. On today's program, we'll be joined by Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina's 1st Congressional District, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Dr. Mehmet Oz from CMS, Calley Means, HHS Secretary Advisor, Lauree Simmons, founder and CEO of Big Dog Ranch Rescue, and Jordana Cohen, who leads their legal policy and development. And then, of course, we'll have 2 of our regulars, Dr. Robert Malone and Russell Brand. But first, we're joined by Jess Kramer, Assistant Administrator for Water at President Trump's EPA. She'll walk us through Monday's important announcement on removing PFOAS and PFOSs from America's drinking water. Jess, welcome once again to the show. Great to have you on again.
Tony, thanks for having me. While I'm here today to talk about forever chemicals, I do want to put the plug when it comes to animal testing, mammalian testing. And Administrator Sheldon is very passionate about that. He put out the memo in January committing to that. And so I want to put in a quick but today I'm excited to highlight two EPA, one addressing PFAS in drinking water and another addressing lead in drinking water. On Monday, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reaffirmed their commitment to make America healthy again by advancing a comprehensive strategy to address PFAS in water. They hosted a roundtable highlighting technologies that capture and destroy PFAS. This is really important because destruction is the only way to avoid passing PFAS challenges from one place to another. EPA is constantly considering ways to support the advancement of technologies and take the forever out of forever chemicals. They announced nearly $1 billion in new funding for states to address PFAS in drinking water. With this grant allotment, the agency has made $5 billion available through this program over 5 years. And EPA will be taking steps to ensure that available funding is expeditiously getting into the communities where it is so desperately needed. They also discussed two proposed rules EPA issued for public comment. The first upholds the national primary drinking water regulations for PFOA and PFOS while proposing enhanced practical implementation strategies. The second would correct the Biden-Harris administration's failure to follow the clear requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act in promulgating regulations for 4 other PFAS. They called out the false narrative that EPA is rolling back protections, and they emphasized that the Trump EPA is tackling PFAS at the right way, through regulations that will stand the test of time, being legally and scientifically defensible, through federal funding to jumpstart actions that reduce exposure, through technical assistance that proactively engages drinking water systems, and through supporting destruction technologies that are needed to eliminate PFAS and not just pass them from one place to another. These actions, combined with the PFAS Out initiative and a forthcoming proposed rule to address PFAS before it is even discharged to our waterways, show that EPA is delivering real solutions to reduce PFAS exposure for Americans. Lastly, I also want to highlight related to lead in drinking water. I know I've been on the show before talking about EPA's action to reduce lead in drinking water. I'm excited to say that today EPA announced nearly $2.9 billion in funding to protect Americans from exposure to lead in drinking water. Lead is a powerful neurotoxin that is especially harmful to children, as we all know, and this investment will go directly to states through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and is part of EPA's unwavering commitment to make America healthy again. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks for coming on for, I think, the 3rd time. And, thanks for the great work that you've been doing at Trump's EPA. And we just want to keep working more and more closely with the EPA. So, I hope that we can just look at all kinds of different ways to work together. So thanks again for coming.
Thanks, Tony. Absolutely here to collaborate in any way we can.
Next up, we have Representative Nancy Mace, and she's a congresswoman representing the 1st District of South Carolina. She's a Republican candidate for governor of South Carolina. She's one of the leading voices in Congress currently on ending taxpayer-funded animal cruelty. She, got a permanent ban on cruel animal testing at the Department of War in the for the fiscal year 2026, passed this year. And, she passed Violet's Law through the House, which forced the federal labs to rehome animals instead of euthanizing them. And then she passed the PAAW Act to end painful NIH experiments on dogs and cats. So thanks so much, Nancy, for the work that you're doing, and very grateful for all of that.
Thank you for having me. All of God's creatures are important. It's important work in Congress, and I was able to get Violet's Law in the Farm Bill that just passed the House. I was able to get the banning of animal testing at the Department of War through the NDAA this year also. I've been working very hard to protect animals and ban animal testing, the VA, Department of War, literally everywhere that we possibly can.
Thanks so much, Nancy. And Next up, say it again. Yeah. So, I thought that you had a 4 or 5 minute speech. So,
I can speak longer if you want. I thought we were going to go back and forth, and that's fine. One of the things one of the things I told my staff, I did also want to bring up, in addition to the animal testing, I've exposed animal testing in my own state, where constituents and voters were told we don't do monkey testing. Turns out we have an entire island off the coast of South Carolina called Morgan Island, where monkeys are sold to be tested. We have monkeys and other primates that are bred for testing in South Carolina and other towns as well. And we're trying to get those defunded. But the other thing, because I am talking to the MAHA crowd, I told my team I wanted to bring up COVID and vaccine mandates. Since we have, this Ebola outbreak is happening. There was another virus on that cruise ship. That terrifying idea that the world could be locked down back again, and all the mistakes that we made. I wanted to share with your audience that I thought getting the vaccine was a good idea, but I got vaccine injured, and I want to. Thank God I didn't get my kids vaccinated, but I'm on Peter McCullough's protocol for the vaccine detox for the COVID vaccine. And I think it's really important now that we learn all the lessons before the next big pandemic that, the world order tries to shove down our throats, or the next leader tries to shut down our country, that we look at big pharma and the harms that they've done to millions of Americans, I believe, who are vaccine injured like myself. And I've taken on the social media companies like Twitter and X and Meta because they banned medical information. And in our country, we support the First Amendment, and our own government hid medical information from people as well. And that's something that I'm really talking about a lot in my race for governor, and also trying to bring attention to it in the halls of Congress. And I think it's really important that we do that. And as governor, too, I'm looking at atmospheric testing. We looked at Tennessee banning atmospheric testing of chemicals. Same thing with Florida. I wrote a bill for that. So not only am I a MAHA member of Congress, I will be a MAHA governor, the most MAHA governor South Carolina has ever seen.
Thanks, Nancy. What's your thought about the fact that, that I've been told that 90 to 95% of this testing doesn't even work, that it's not
right.
even giving us, anything that's useful for people. How is it that it keeps going on, year after year?
Well, it's a moneymaker.
Are the roadblocks?
It's a moneymaker for universities to do this sort of testing that doesn't actually relate to humans. If you're doing a test on a mouse, that has nothing to do with human behavior, and often isn't helpful. And technology has gotten so far ahead. We have better ways to do testing. In fact, I had a hearing last year. Over $26 million was spent on making mice transgender and giving them a gay club drug and testing them on it after they cut their genitals off. I mean, we've got these awful tests. We had tests where beagles were eaten alive by insects. There's no reason for that, right? And so we've got to bring attention to these horrific, medieval barbaric experiments on animals. It's disgusting, and we don't need to be doing it. But schools are making money from it. There are organizations that are making money off of this, quote, research. We need to find better ways to invest that money, maybe in our own food supply, cleaning our water so we're not dying of cancer and kids aren't getting autism, putting labels on vaccines so we know what ingredients are in there, not mandating all those vaccines. Those kinds of things would make a lot more sense to put our money and invest in.
Yeah, it just seems like there are so many things like that, but that, animal testing is just such low-hanging fruit that nobody in the country could disagree with it, other than the people who are making, millions of dollars by doing that kind of disgusting work.
Yep. Look no further than our universities.
Definitely. So hope you keep coming on. We would love to have you back, and thanks for dropping in.
Anytime. Thank you so much, and God bless.
You too. Next up, we have Russell Brand, and Russell has been wrongly accused. He's been vilified, and I believe that it's because, like Bobby Kennedy, he stood up to some of the most, powerful and corrupt people on the planet. He's the author of an incredible new book, How to Become a Christian in 7 Days. And I always just love having you on, Russell. So thanks for coming yet again.
Hey, I love you, Tony. Are you back from Australia?
Yes.
Well, I've missed you and I'm glad you're back. And thank you, as always, for that kind introduction and for being brave and for sticking up for me. I know it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to do. And I really appreciate it. I know that today you've been primarily talking about animal testing. And when I saw, we've been talking today about the Ebola outbreak and hantavirus outbreak and all of the various other medical emergencies that, if we're not careful, will end up being used to further restrict human freedom. But I'm looking because Nurse Nikki there has kindly provided it. Make America Healthy Again is RFK Jr.'s health agenda under the Trump administration, focused on ending the chronic disease epidemic, now explicitly including animal welfare as part of that mission. FDA are committed to making animal experiments the exception rather than the norm, replacing them with AI models and human cell testing. That sounds like a bloody good idea. NIH funding an $87 million center, new standardized organoid modeling center, funded to develop lab-grown 3D tissue models as animal testing alternatives. That's a nightmare waiting to happen. Like, when that's going to be Frankensteining up of the slab, it's going to get all monster mash. I was working in the lab one night when the 3D flesh gave me an awful fright. I don't know about that one. NIH Clinical Center shutdown. The the Bethesda lab where Fauci-era beagle experiments occurred was closed by NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya. How I love Jay Bhattacharya. And one of my favorite MGT, Margaret Taylor Greene, MTG, moments was when she got right antsy about all them beagles, didn't she? When she said, how can he do that? I mean, like, I'm British, huh? Did you notice? Did you know that about me? I'm British. And we are much more, as a nation, affected by cruelty to animals than cruelty to human beings. The minute we get a whiff of animals being treated badly, it is over. I reckon you could unite the British people, even those that are divided by complex issues like Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, Russia, the nature of the pandemic, emergent ethno-nationalism and patriotism, the collapse of two-party parliamentary politics, the rise of facial recognition technology. If you could maybe find an articulate enough cat or even hamster, it would be possible, I think, to unite the British people. We love animals. And any humane method that would grant us the ability to make scientific advance without cruelty would certainly be welcome. And I'm not surprised that RFK is at the forefront of looking at that. Oh my gosh, look at this. Animal rehoming. I didn't see this one. NIH now permits grant funding to find homes for retired lab animals. I want the rights to that cartoon. It's a bunch of animals that have been experimented on. One's like a monkey with like a semi-robot brain, a rabbit in lipstick that's been working for, I don't know, one of the Kardashian companies that make lipstick, and maybe some rats or one of, and then Fauci's smoking beagle. And all of them are on the run and they're sort of promoting MAHA values. There, Tony, I could have that written for you. I can get a synopsis on your desk within an hour. My wife will do the illustrations. I'll write it. Will Skyhorse publish it? There, and it's the lab animal rehoming. Or do you want to wait till after my trial and presumed acquittal if there's any justice in the UK? Hey, I'll wrap it up there, Tony, because you're back on screen. Thanks for having me on, Tony.
Yeah, sorry that I missed your last comment. But one last point that I would like to make is that we can't be healthier and happier if people are vilified and attacked and wrongly prosecuted and deplatformed when they stand up to and challenge the status quo. And the same is true with if we torture animals or if we let beagles or any other animal be tortured in this country. So we want to make it, MAHA stands for making it easier and more affordable to be healthy and to end the corruption in this country. But it does go to all of these other things that you have to be able to disagree. And that's something that's happening now that hasn't happened before. So thank you so much, Russell, for on each time. And and it looks like I'm freezing again. But anyway. So next up, we have Lauree Simmons, and her passion for saving dogs led to the creation of Big Dog Ranch Rescue, the largest no-kill dog rescue in the country. And Big Dog Ranch Rescue has saved the lives of more than 60,000 dogs. And Lauree has also led, this charge to pass laws that support animal welfare all around the country. So thanks so much, Lauree, for all the incredible work you're doing. And we're looking forward to partnering with you. And great to have you here with us.
Well, thank you so much, Tony, for having us on. And just to correct, we've saved almost 90,000 dogs so far since we opened in 2008. I want to introduce myself a little bit. I'm Lauree Simmons. I'm the president, founder of Big Dog Ranch Rescue, and we are the largest no-kill rescue in the entire country for dogs. For years, our organization is focused on rescuing, rehabilitating, and rehoming dogs from abuse, neglect, disasters, and large-scale breeding operations. But over time, we've realized that rescue alone isn't enough. We cannot rescue our way out of this overpopulation problem. We also need to be part of a bigger, broader national conversation surrounding animal welfare and scientific innovation and the future of biomedical research. So we are incredibly encouraged by the leadership and the engagement we're seeing from the Trump administration when it comes to animal welfare, scientific advancement, and accountability. I was lucky enough to be part of a group in December 2025 with the support of Laura Trump. Senior federal officials launched a coordinated multi-agency initiative led by Pam Bondi, Laura Trump, Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that all focused on strengthening animal welfare enforcement and increasing coordination surrounding issues involving cruelty, puppy mills, and animal testing. I can personally say that Secretary Kennedy looked directly across the table at myself and the rest of us during a roundtable discussion and stated that ending animal testing, especially on dogs, was a huge priority of his. So many of us who have spent years fighting for these animals, hearing those words meant everything to me. It gave us all hope that change will finally be coming. For years, organizations like ours hoped that these issues would finally receive national attention. And today, for the first time in a long time, it feels like people are finally listening. We're encouraged by initiatives like ARRIVA, the Office of Research, Innovation, Validation, and Application at the NIH, which reflects a growing national focus on advancing more modern, human-relevant research methods while continuing scientific innovation. We believe ARRIVA needs to officially open now and move forward because these scientific advancements are critically important, not only for the future of medicine, but especially for the lives of these innocent animals. I'm sure many of you saw recently that Big Dog Ranch Rescue helped lead one of the largest beagle rescue missions in recent history involving dogs from Ridgeland Farms. More than 1,500 beagles were transferred into our rescue care, with Big Dog Ranch Rescue receiving 1,000 of those dogs and transporting them to trusted partners across the country. Hundreds more were brought to our Florida campus. But despite these best efforts, hundreds of dogs are research and used in testing programs across this country. According to recent USDA inspection data, Marshall Bioresources alone in New York houses more than 22,000 dogs and puppies destined for laboratory testing and cruel experimentation. Publicly available federal records continue to be used in federally funded experiments supported by the NIH and FDA. We must end this. And these experiments include dogs intentionally bred to go blind, dogs subjected to nerve damage procedures that cause paralysis, and dogs exposed to radioactive substances to study the effects. For adoption or release. If they survive the experiments themselves, many are ultimately euthanized afterwards. These are not just test subjects. These are dogs, women and man's best friends, the most loyal, trusted thing on this planet. The same dogs Americans sleep beside at night, the same dogs who greet us at the front door, the same dogs our children grow up loving, and the same dogs who become part of our families. And yet, behind closed laboratory doors, many spend their entire lives in cages, being tortured, only to die in experimentation funded by taxpayer dollars. We're supposed to be a compassionate and humane country. These innocent dogs deserve more than a life of cruelty in a lab. They deserve sunlight, fresh air, freedom, safety, and the love of a family. At Big Dog Ranch Rescue, we will continue fighting for these dogs every single day. We are hopeful that this administration will help lead the way towards meaningful change. We need to do better for man and woman's best friend. The time is now, and we are counting on MAHA to make this happen.
Please stand by. We'll be right back.
Looks like I might be back. Sorry for the long wait. We're having tech problems that we've had in the last few weeks. Always hard to tell if that's a kind of deplatforming or if it's something else. But in any case, I'd like to welcome Jordana Cohen. And Jordana is a lawyer who focuses on animal welfare, and she works at on legal policy and development for Big Dog Ranch Rescue. She works right alongside Lauree, who you met before, and she focuses on animal welfare, scientific progress, and more modern and human relevant research methods and possibilities. So thanks so much, Jordana, for coming on, and sorry for the long wait. Sorry for the complication, but it's great to have you on now.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thanks so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here speaking about such an important topic. One of the most important parts of this conversation is recognizing that scientists, regulators, policymakers, they're all openly acknowledging that the traditional animal testing models have significant limitations when it comes to predicting human outcomes. Animal welfare policy has increasingly become part of RFK Jr.'s MAHA agenda, supported by bipartisan legislative action, executive action, and rapid technological advancements as well. A major pillar of that conversation is the transition towards new approach methodologies, or what they call NAMs, which are technologies designed to provide earlier, more predictive, more human-relevant insights into disease and treatment outcomes. The MAHA Commission's strategy report specifically notes that these technologies can improve prevention, diagnosis, and personalized treatment strategies while reducing reliance on animal studies that often fail to replicate complex human conditions. The statistics are striking. Tony had mentioned it before, but depending on the study and the therapeutic area, it's estimated that approximately 90 to 95% of drugs that appear successful in animal studies ultimately fail in human clinical trials. Even the U.S. Food, Drug Administration, FDA, has acknowledged that the vast majority of drugs that succeed in animal testing never successfully translate to humans. The NIH has also recognized that certain areas of research, Alzheimer's disease and cancer, have shown limited success in translating animal model outcomes into effective human treatments. As a result, clinical failure rates remain very high across therapeutic categories, leading to enormous financial waste, delayed innovation, and slower progress for patients waiting for these effective treatments. Secretary Kennedy has publicly stated that internal studies within HHS demonstrated that the predictivity of animal models for human health outcomes is very, very poor. So the question we should all be asking in 2026 is, why are we still continuing to accept a 90 to 95% failure rate as the standard? Why is a 90 to 95% failure rate considered a success metric, especially at a time when we're witnessing extraordinary advances in science, advances in artificial intelligence, machine learning, computational biology, organ-on-chip systems, human tissue modeling, precision medicine, and predictive data analytics. I mean, the list just goes on, but these technologies have the potential to create more human-relevant methods that will significantly improve translational accuracy between preclinical research and actual human outcomes. So this is why I believe this is a national conversation happening right now, and it is so important. I want to commend the administration and the leaders associated with the MAHA movement for helping bring this attention to the importance of pursuing the best science and the best health outcomes for the American people. And what I appreciate most about the current dialogue is that it's encouraging open discussion around scientific modernization, innovation, and also accountability. We are also seeing major institutional momentum through initiatives like Arriva, which is something that Lauree had touched upon, which needs to be operationalized. It's designed to advance alternative methodologies and improve translational science. And to me, this conversation is ultimately about better science, better technology, better predictive models, and most evidently, better outcomes for patients. And if we can achieve that while also reducing reliance on animal testing over time, that's meaningful progress worth pursuing. So I commend this administration. I think that we're on the right path, but now is the time, as Lauree said, and we're counting on MAHA to make America healthy again and to rid of animal testing because it's just not working.
Thank you so much. And, to both you and to Lauree, it is just shocking that the failure rates are so high, that the cruelty is just so disgusting, that the wasted money is just an outrage. And it's so clearly something that we need to fix now, that we can fix now, that we can do better, we can be better people, we can treat animals better. And this would be such a big MAHA with just low-hanging fruit. And I just want you to know that we're going to work hard with you to try to.
Thank you. We are right there alongside you and excited for what's to come.
Thanks for coming on. Next up, we have Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, and he's always been just an incredible MAHA champion. He was one of the first people in the federal government to question the failed COVID response and to give voice to those who were harmed by the COVID vaccine. Last week, he was involved in such important hearings that exposed some of Anthony Fauci's crimes. Just got into the details of the things that happened during the COVID period. And I'm just so grateful to him on behalf of everyone that you do. So thanks again for everything. Ron, we can't hear you.
Mute button. Okay. Sorry about that, Tony. You're kind of breaking up on my end. Hopefully people can hear me now. Last week, Rand Paul, again, hats off to him for finding a whistleblower within CIA that was actually detailed to Tulsi Gabbard's team that was set up to carry out an executive order to declassify and reveal the truth to the American public on a host of issues. This one focused on the COVID origins issue, the scandal. The fact that Anthony Fauci pretty well cooked the books by stacking all the scientific experts that CIA looked at to analyze, the same exact people that he'd been providing grants to, that within a couple of days had changed their evaluation from probably was man-made to sprang from nature. And so that was a very important hearing, very important revelation. I hope that the CIA whistleblower, Jim Erdman, I hope he does not get retaliated against. I did, by the way, call on an apology from CIA Director Radcliffe, whose spokesperson during the hearing basically issued a scathing criticism of the hearing, saying that it was political theater. It wasn't. This is the kind of oversight the American people want to hear. I also raised the issue and challenged the mainstream media to pay attention to cover what I was on this broadcast last time talking about was the major scandal, the largest scandal in my lifetime in government, the fact that Peter Marks, as head of CBER, the group within FDA that approves vaccines and is supposed to surveil and watch for safety signals, was warned that their algorithm they're using to analyze VAERS was going to hide mass safety signals. 26 days later, using a new algorithm, senior FDA officials were shown that there were 49 cases of extreme masking using the old system, and they were showing 25 safety signals on very serious adverse events like sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, different types of strokes. For the next 3 months, they kept doing data runs, more serious adverse events being signaled, other types of sudden death. And yet, Peter Marks and the FDA decided to stick with the old algorithm that they knew would hide safety signals and have continued to lie to the American public ever since, that we just aren't seeing safety signals. It's such a scandal because as of March 1st, or certainly March 26th, the American public, the global public, deserved to know that there were risks. These things weren't completely safe or effective, that the adverse events were far more than rare and mild. They were often life-taking, certainly physically, long-term, totally disabling types of adverse events. So anybody who took the jab, particularly if they took it reluctantly, but they relied on the lies of people like Peter Marks and, quite honestly, President Biden and Walensky and the whole crew over there, they should be outraged. And the reason I say this most major scandal, there were probably millions of people impacted because they were not fully informed before they stepped up the plate and did what they thought they needed to do for society. Remember, this is a pandemic of the unvaxxed. If you didn't get that shot, if you didn't have your child get that shot, your child could kill grandma. That's what the American people were being told. So this is a major scandal. The next major scandal is the fact that nobody, not ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, CNN, MS Now, is covering this at all. Only Fox News and Fox Business News is willing to have me on, interview me about this major scandal. So I'm hoping people on this call will do everything they can to start publicizing that. The American people deserve to understand the truth about this major, major scandal.
This isn't theater. It's not theater to tell the truth. We've been subjected to years and years of theater, and that theater has to end now. And it is ending. And we're doing better because of people like you and Secretary Kennedy and, the entire team. But there's a lot more work to be done. And the lies and all of the games have to end. And we at MAHA, we represent 200 million people in this country who are demanding the truth. So I just want to say that I'm really grateful for the incredible work you're doing. And we just want to be part of that and help you in any way we can to get the truth out there, to make sure that the kinds of lies that, were okay in the past, that succeeded in the past, don't succeed ever again in the future. So thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Dr. Robert Malone, and he's been one of the most important voices for medical freedom and informed consent. And he's been right at the heart of exposing the corruption of the medical, the entire medical field. And he's even written a book on the kind of theater that Ron Johnson mentioned, and it's called Psy Wars, but it's it really tells you what these games are, how they're played, and then, how maybe we can end them in the future. So he's a doctor, he's an inventor, he's a scientist, he's a journalist, he's an incredible writer, and he's written multiple titles, and he's got a lot more books coming. And we're thrilled to have you on once again, Robert.
Thanks a lot, Tony. So friends, I want to tell you about an invoice today. A federal contractor billed the United States government for a procedure called a cordectomy. A cordectomy is when you take a scalpel and you slit a dog's vocal cords so it can't bark, can't whimper, can't cry. They did this to 44 beagle puppies, 6 months old, 8 months old, so that the lab workers wouldn't have to hear them when they were force-fed an experimental drug for weeks and then killed and then dissected. $1.68 million of your money. The vocal cord surgery was a separate line item in the contract. That happened under Dr. Anthony Fauci's division of the NIH, the NIAID. And when the documents came out in 2021, pried loose by a small watchdog called the White Coat Waste Project, something extraordinary happened in this country. Nobody defended it. Republicans didn't defend it. Democrats didn't defend it. Nancy Mace and Joni Ernst on one side, Cory Booker and the animal welfare groups on the other. And for once in our broken politics, everyone looked at the same set of facts and said, this is wrong, and we're going to stop it. And they did. In December of 2022, Congress passed the FDA Modernization Act 2.0. For the first time since 1938, since Franklin Roosevelt was president, drug companies are legally allowed to use modern alternatives instead of animal testing. Computer models, human cells in a dish, organ-on-a-chip systems, tools that didn't exist when these laws were written. In April of last year, the FDA under Commissioner Marty Makary released a roadmap to phase out animal testing as the default, not someday, with timelines. Notice, it's the FDA. The FDA is what's been driving much of this. 3 weeks after that, the NIH under Director Jay Bhattacharya did the same thing for federally funded research. They created a new office to coordinate the shift. They stopped funding grants that purpose only animal testing. And they shut down the last Beagle laboratory on the NIH campus in Bethesda. PETA sent the NIH director flowers. Elon Musk applauded on X. Marjorie Taylor Greene celebrated it. So did the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. When was the last time that coalition agreed on anything? Now, here's the part I want you to sit with. The federal agencies, the same buildings, the same establishment, we are sometimes told to trust without question. They have now officially admitted something. They have admitted that more than 90% of drugs that passed animal trials still fail in human beings. 90%. They've admitted that the system was kept running for 40 years past its usefulness, not because the science demanded it, but because that's how it's always been done. They have admitted that institutional inertia is a real thing, that, quote, the expert said so is not the end of the conversation, that sunlight and FOIA requests and ordinary citizens like you asking uncomfortable questions, these things actually changed federal policy where decades of inside the system reform could not. That is a remarkable concession. And if you've ever wondered about your skepticism of the public health establishment was justified, whether you were crazy to ask the questions you were asking, the Beagles are your answer. They ran this program for 40 years, behind locked doors, with redacted documents, with cordectomies on the invoice. And it took outsiders. It took people the system dismissed as cranks to drag it into the light. Now, our job is not to declare war on science. Our job is to declare war on institutional capture, on habits that survive long after the reasons for them have died, on a system that defends itself in private using arguments it would never make in public. The Beagles won because the case against them couldn't survive being described to ordinary Americans in plain English. The question now, the real MAHA question, is what else is running on inertia? What else is being defended on the grounds that the experts said so, where the experts are the same people who built the system? We have our answer about the dogs. We have a lot more answers to go find. Thank you, and thanks for your support for MAHA and for these amazing changes that Secretary Kennedy and his team are enabling.
Yeah, thanks so much. And, clearly, just to say once again, if we're going to make it easier to be healthy in this country, we have to stop wasting millions of dollars torturing beagles. And, we have the incredible technology at our fingertips, and we have to not only do the right thing, but save money, have better outcomes, and we have to stop. I mean, we are still right now. So we're making progress, but, Robert, we are still torturing thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of beagles, even in New York State where I live. So that has to stop. And you've challenged the status quo time after time. You're challenging it right now. And that saves lives. You've saved lives. And you're also saving beagles' lives. So thank you so much. And great to have you on once again.
Thanks, Tony.
Next up, we have Calley Means, and he is a senior advisor to Secretary Kennedy and President Trump on all things MAHA. And, he is saving lives too by, really looking at ultra processed foods and the incredible toll that they played, that they've had on the health and welfare of just about everybody in this country. And he's the co-author of the runaway bestseller, Good Energy, with his incredible sister, Calley Means, who should be the Surgeon General. And he's been working day and night to address the root causes of disease, focusing on healthy food, exercise, sleep, stress management. So, great to have you on, Calley, once again. And thank you for everything.
Thank you. And it's just such a great, setup for me to come in with Dr. Malone and asking that question, what else is being defended? Not because it's the right science, but because it's just what the experts told us to do. And I think, being here at HHS at the White House, it's almost every part of healthcare. There is an ecosystem here that is built to defend the status quo. There's many, many good people in government, in industry, but there is a unrelenting force to gaslight the American people from asking questions. And I think you saw it with Casey. I mean, Casey's message was very simple. With have Senator Johnson on, it was just a year and a half ago that we had a roundtable, and Senator Johnson helped really bring these issues to the campaign to the forefront. But the message of MAHA is unbelievably simple, which is that we are getting sick because of root cause factors, because of our food, because of over medicalization, because of the various toxins that modern life has given us. These modern life and all these conveniences that we don't want to put back in the bottle, but we should be studying these things, and that's what's making us sick. And that's but the sick care incentives, the fact that we're spending 3 times more than any other country in healthcare per capita, and the healthcare industry is the largest and by some measures fastest growing industry in the country. It's an amoeba that wants to gaslight us from asking root cause questions, wants to really incentivize against patients being empowered, because that will hurt them. And that is the forces that I think we've really taken on in the past year. And DC has responded. There's more lobbying spending this year than at any time in American history. And a lot of that is because of what MAHA has done and what Secretary Kennedy has done. And there's articles about these lobbyists, popping champagne for winning some small battles. But I think what's happening now, and I think is very positive. And I think we all have real reason to be positive. When you get to pharmaceuticals and the healthcare industry, there have been material advancements in empowering patients and taking on the incentives of the medical industry. I think what Secretary Kennedy got done with peptides is very disruptive. We've had a huge conversation in the area of psychiatry. More than 20% of women are on an SSRI right now. And we had an announcement where we actually, for the first time, have deprescribing protocols for SSRIs. And you actually had the leading medical organizations in psychiatry, maybe reluctantly, but ended up saying that this is probably the right move. They're coming along. The executive order on mental health, on frontier mental health treatments that the president signed with Joe Rogan and Secretary Kennedy, on some really promising treatments that veterans have found actually reverse the root cause of their mental health issues, psychedelic compounds, ibogaine, things like that. The fact that the government is saying, let's study this, let's look at new paradigms for mental health, that's a really, really big deal. And the fact that actually medical organizations, large hospital systems are coming to us, they're actually complaining to us that patients are asking more questions. I heard from one major medical system that they track data, and before MAHA a couple of years ago, it was 5 to 10% of patients asked questions during visits. Now it's over 50%, and doctor-patient meetings are taking longer, which they're saying is a problem. To me, that's a very good thing. Like, Americans are waking up. When it comes to food, I think we've radically changed. The country has radically changed the culture around food in the past year. Lobbyists are fighting on tactical issues, but I saw a study last week that the American Grocers Association reported that real food, fresh food purchases have gone up 9% in 2025. It's the largest increase in fresh food purchasing in American history. Usually teeters, a couple basis points. A massive increase last year in real food and a decrease in ultra-processed food purchasing. Americans are waking up to that. You talk about academia. There's a lot of complaints that could go on there, but what the NIH is doing with what Dr. Malone talked about, new ways to study that don't involve animal testing, grants, billions of dollars that's going to studying the root cause of issues instead of just what drugs we can do to manage those issues. There's a radical change right now happening in research incentives. And just like we have with psychiatry, we have major medical groups actually agreeing that these things are good. We're changing the culture. And then on the issue of chemicals, we've had a lot of talk about that, a lot of talk about pesticides. But there is clearly something happening in the country where Americans, where researchers, where American culture is paying much more attention to what's going into our products, what's going into our food. And this conversation, I don't think it can be taken for granted. I think what we have built cannot be put back in the bottle. And it's because of President Trump, because of Bobby Kennedy, because they have given license to ask these questions. And I think while the political day-to-day can be invigorating and it's sometimes frustrating, what's happening with unleashing this conversation is momentum that is going to continue to change the world, and not going back. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tony, for everything. We've got to keep pushing, got to keep talking about this, got to keep asking questions.
Thanks, Calley. It's just clearly true that the things that people have seen and learned in the last, 16 months can't be unseen and unlearned. And, people by the millions, like you said, they're going to doctors and they're asking questions. They're going into stores and they're looking at food labels. And, they're waking up and they're challenging the status quo by the millions. And they're recognizing that the experts got it wrong, that they got it wrong for a generation, that they failed the American public. And, they're failing the American public because they don't work for us. They work for big pharma, big food, big ag. They are part of the corruption. And, these are really tough battles. And you've been right in the middle of them. But these are world-changing battles. And these are battles over billions and billions of dollars. And there's no way that they're going to be easy. But we've made a ton of progress in a short period of time. And I think it's possible that if we keep fighting and if we stick together, we can win. And they are just throwing the kitchen sink at us. They're spending billions of dollars. Like you said, lobbyists. They're just doing everything they can do to mislead the American public, to change the argument, to make it look like, we are not following science. But this is what real science is, challenging the status quo, the work that you're doing, that Secretary Kennedy's doing, that Stephanie Spear's doing, Dr. Oz, the entire team. You guys are really pursuing science. And I'm just really grateful for it. And I know that all the thousands of people watching this, that they are grateful for it. And even though, we have tech problems, we have, maybe we're being deplatformed, but we're just going to keep on coming hard and we're going to keep on fighting. And I believe in you and the whole team. And I think we're going to get this job done. So thanks for everything you do, Calley. Next up, we have Stephanie Carlton, and she is standing in today for Dr. Oz. And she is Deputy Administrator at CMS. And she's going to update us on all of the incredible things that are happening with Medicare and Medicaid in their battle to make it easier and more affordable to be healthy in this country. And, doing that by ending the corruption. And, some of the corruption that Dr. Oz has pointed out and that he's been fighting is just so incredibly dramatic that, it's just shocking. But Stephanie, thanks for coming on and welcome.
Thanks for having me. Dr. Oz is in the middle of fighting battles while he's running CMS. He's actually tonight going to fly to a state for another fraud bust. The man doesn't stop. It's absolutely incredible. He's got that heart surgeon DNA where he's just on all the time, winning for the American people. And it's really inspiring to get to work with every day. Just as an update on what we are doing at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Oz and I actually spoke this morning and we shared our priorities for the rest of 2026. We put out a very clear vision. Our vision is to unlock every American's full potential by making it easier to be healthy. And Tony, I love the way that you framed it because part of that is helping Americans make good nutrition choices, getting outside, do the physical activity that they need to do. Part of it is fighting special interests so that when you need to use a system, when you need to use a doctor or a hospital, it is more affordable. We're taking special interests out and we are making sure that Americans get the care that they need at an affordable price. When you think about the average American family spends about $26,000 a year on health insurance, something is wrong. It's even worse if you go and look at the fact that We spend about twice as much per person as other westernized countries do. And yet our obesity rates are twice as high than most countries in Europe. They're 10 times as high as places like Japan. We can do better, and we have to demand better value from the system. And so much of that is taking on special interests in Washington that are robbing us of our health. And we get to do that every day in DC with Dr. Oz. So the objectives and key results is what we call our strategic plan. I mentioned the vision and the North Star for that. We've got 4 key parts to that strategic plan. The first one is crushing fraud. When it comes to the Medicare program, it's about $1 trillion program. We were okay on that. We knew we needed to do more. But on the Medicaid side, as a $900 billion program, we had 6 people fighting fraud. That's it. Think about just the wasted resources that were being stolen by crooks instead of going to people who are vulnerable Americans that really need care. He is like on every day. This is something top of mind for him every day. And as I mentioned, he's going out tomorrow for another bust. So stay tuned. Tomorrow evening, you'll see news on that. The second big thing that we did, no surprise, our huge priority here is use every lever possible at CMS to make America healthy again. There's a lot of things we can do. As you know, Medicare is a payer, so is Medicaid. So we think about what are the things we can do as a payer to make America healthy again. And there's a number of things. One, we regulate hospitals. And so we actually set the conditions of participation for hospitals that participate in that program. Secretary Kennedy, Dr. Oz made a big announcement on March 30th, where they said, look, hospitals, you need to serve your patients food that is evidence-based nutrition. That's not happening in a lot of hospitals today. Thankfully, Secretary Kennedy, Secretary Rollins updated our national dietary guidelines so that it reflects the very latest research and evidence so Americans have the tools they need to make healthier choices. And now we are holding hospitals accountable to an evidence-based standard for the food that they serve to patients. That's important, not just when you're in the hospital, but because it's a forum to teach Americans how to make healthier choices that ultimately improve health outcomes. So that is a big one. Another big one that we're going to be announcing a lot more in the months to come is in the Medicaid program. We have all these quality measures, but we have like thousands of them. And nobody's focused on the big things that really matter. And those are the health outcomes for vulnerable Americans. So we're going to shift that and really measure what matters in the Medicaid program and hold insurance companies accountable to actually make people healthier in the Medicaid program. Again, it's a program we spend about $900 billion on. And there's tons of opportunity to do that better. Another big focus for us under the MAHA pillar, if you will, in our strategic plan is using technology. If you think about equipping Americans with tools and information and the truth about the healthcare system, about what's going on with their health when you use data, when you use artificial intelligence, and give them another option to ask hard questions about their health, ask hard questions of their doctor or their hospital, and make sure that they're getting the best care possible. That is something we are working on every day. And we've just worked with major companies to launch new tools, new technology tools, so you've got access to evidence-based health information on your smartphone 24/7. That has been a huge priority for Dr. Oz and what we're doing here at CMS. There are 2 other pillars I will call out briefly. The third is really around affordability. Again, $26,000 for the average American family is just too much that we're spending on healthcare. We have to bring down the cost of care. We're looking at things like overregulation, which is a compliance exercise. Instead of really holding the system accountable for outcomes and safety, we want to move towards a system that's simpler and it works better and gets better accountability. So that is a big priority. And by doing that, we actually start to bring down the cost of healthcare. Price transparency is another thing. We believe firmly that Americans have a right to know how much a procedure is going to cost them if they need to go to the doctor, if they need to go to the hospital, and they should know up front what the costs of care are, and they should be able to have the tools to negotiate a better deal if they want to do that, or go to a doctor that's going to treat them more fairly. But that starts with transparency and giving Americans real data and real information that they deserve. The last thing I'll call out, and again, Dr. Oz and I announced this morning at a major event at the Bipartisan Policy Center. So our fourth pillar is around thinking about artificial intelligence first. We're training all 6,000 employees at CMS on how to use the latest tools and technology. But we're also thinking about how does that help make healthcare more affordable? And how does it better equip Americans with the tools they need to take better care of their own health? So we've got a lot going on, more to come in the weeks ahead, and we'll be back soon with another update. Tony, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Stephanie. And, clearly you guys are crushing it, and you're crushing fraud. And the idea that there's 6 people, that there have been 6 people out there with $1 billion worth of fraud. What if there were 1,000 people? I mean, what could we uncover then? So we clearly need more research into that, more busts, more justice. And, then back to the idea of hospitals serving junk food to people in desperate need of their help. I mean, it's just incredible that that's happened for a generation. And then a government that over that same generation green-lighted in all areas products that poison the American public. So that our government has presided over the poisoning of the public, and that's ending now. But that fighting corruption saves lives, and fighting corruption is fighting for real science. For science in the public interest, not in the private interest, and that's what's so critical now. And then radical transparency, and that is just telling the truth to the public. Even if the big corporations who have done so much damage to us don't want us to. And I think, and I've seen this government be willing to talk to those companies, all those companies who have done bad things in the past, and offered them the opportunity to redeem themselves and to do a better job. And that's what we need. We need to partner with everybody. It doesn't matter what they've done in the past. What matters is what we're all going to do together in the future. And your point about using AI, using every tool we can find, except beagles. We cannot use beagles anymore. So let's be clear about that. But using AI, using anything else we can use to do a better job and to make it easier and more affordable to be healthy in this country. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
You too. Okay, so thanks so much for joining us on the MAHA Media Hub, and for tuning in each week. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We are struggling with that. It's kind of hard to tell whether it's from outside nefarious forces or whether we can just do a better job. But we're going to focus on just doing a better job. And thanks to all of the speakers who came on, and to all of you who come on each week. So let me just say that what happened with Julia Letlow and Senator Cassidy was just a small showing of what's possible for MAHA. And, we have an incredibly powerful operation, and we're building it every day. And I think we can do better and better and better. So we have 200,000 followers on Substack. I think, and I've said before, that we can get to 2 or 3 million, maybe by year end. We're going to really fight to do that. We have roundtables once a month, sometimes twice a month through MAHA Institute. We've got the MAHA Summit on September 29th, which is just going to be an historic showing. I mean, last November, we had all of the critical players in the medical field. People who we've disagreed with, people who we've fought against, people who are our friends, who are our partners. And once again, that's a lot of what MAHA does, that we want to gather together with everybody who will help us to make Americans healthier, to make it possible to be healthier in this country. Like Stephanie said, we spend, and Calley said it too, we're spending so much money, we're wasting so much money, so much more money than any other country of the 30 industrialized countries in this, in the world. And we're getting worse health outcomes, and we can do so much better. So, the influencers who watch this show represent 200 million people, 200 million different people who they get to, who they correspond to in their, with in their own way every day on their platforms. And so we're going to use every bit of the power we have. We're going to harness all of it to fight this corruption and to fight all of the lies and the misrepresentations and the deplatforming, and try to come out of this period, out of these next 2.5 years, with a happier and a healthier country. And we believe that's possible. So following this call, you're going to get an email that's going to take out all the tech problems and just show you clips from all of the terrific speakers we've had and give you things that you can do to help us. And though, you know, and then we really hope that you'll go to our website at mahaaction.org, contact your senators, your congressmen, fight for the things that really matter for MAHA. And the Railway Safety Act, that's a really critical thing. That's tomorrow. We're going to send a very clear email telling you what to do there. So you'll get that in the next 3 or 4 hours. And then just get involved with incredible organizations that we are going to partner with, some that we have partnered with. But, the one from this show is the Beagles. Focus on the Beagles. We can save thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of Beagles. It's an abomination. It's ridiculous. It's something that we should all, have real shame for on behalf of our country and our government. We can do better. We can save these Beagles, and we need to do it now. So, contact the Big Dog Ranch Rescue, just an incredible organization doing God's work. And thank you all for joining us, for bearing with us. And we'll see you next Wednesday at 4 p.m.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.